And the first thing you need is, of course, a database. So if you already have a database, feel free to skip ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to show you two methods to create a database depending on your setup. The first method will be when you host your server with a hosting provider, because then you probably have a panel that looks something like that. And in that case, you can go to the left here and click on the databases item. I already have a database here, so I'm going to delete it for this video. And you can create a new database by clicking on this button right here. If you don't have the option to do that, then your hosting provider might have restricted this feature for you. In this case, you can follow along with the local setup I'm going to show after that, or you maybe need to upgrade your subscription package with your hosting provider. So anyways, click on Create Database, select a host, then you can optionally define a database name and configure from where connections should be allowed. In my case, I'm okay with the default options. I'm going to click on Create. Then to view the details, click on the eye icon right here and take note of the host, the database name, the username, and the corresponding password. And now we can continue with the local setup if you want to test your plugins locally. We're going to do that with Docker Compose. So if you don't have Docker installed on your system, download it from docker.com, go to Products and to Docker Desktop. Then select the version matching your operating system. For the majority of you, this will probably be this one. Then download and install it. Then when you open the Docker Desktop app, you get a screen like that. Read and accept the service agreement. Click on Finish. Click on Skip because we don't want to log in now. Then you should see engine running at the bottom right here. And then after that, open a terminal and you now should be able to execute Docker commands. Then navigate to a directory where you want the database folder to be created. In my case, I'm going to create it on the desktop. So I navigate to the desktop directory and I create a new directory with make directory and I call it MySql database. And of course you can do all that with the GUI application. I just like to do it in the terminal. Then go inside that newly created directory and open it in your favorite code editor. And now we can create the configuration file that will describe the database service so that we can actually run it. And with Docker Compose, you do it with a file called compose.yaml. So create a file that is exactly called compose.yaml. And inside here, we're going to define the structure, but I already prepared that for you. So you just need to copy paste it. Go to my GitHub page, click on repositories, and then on MySql Docker. Select the compose.yaml file and copy the content with this button. Then paste it here. And what this file does, it defines a service called database that uses MySql in the latest version as its base image, and it connects port 3306 of your PC to port 3306 of the database. So that means that you can reach the database on port 3306 of your PC. Then down here, we define a directory called data, where all the database content will be stored. And down at the bottom, we set a few environment variables to set the root password, the default database name. We also create a database user that we can use inside the plugins and a corresponding password. And you can change all those values to something different, of course. Then to start the database, open a new terminal and type docker compose up. This may take a few seconds, but the important thing is that you see ready for connections down here. This means that the database has started successfully and you can now exit out of that log by pressing D. Then let's clear the screen. And now if you want to open the MySql console for whatever reasons, you can do that with the following command: docker compose exec for execute, then -it for iterative mode, then the name of the container. In our case, it is database as we defined up here. So database, and then the command to open the MySql console, which is MySql-p. Enter, and then enter the root password as we defined up here. Press enter again. And now you can execute SQL commands. For example, you can show all the databases. And as you can see, here's the database that we created in the compose file. And you can exit out of that by typing exit, semicolon, and then pressing enter. For the coding part of this video, I prepared an empty plugin project, but before we can start coding, we need to add a few dependencies. The first dependency will be HiCarryCP, which is sort of like a caching system for database connections. So to get it, just search for HiCarryCP Maven. Then on this website, select a version, preferably the latest version, scroll down, then copy the dependency reference and open the pom.xml and add the dependency at the bottom right here. Then reload the Maven dependencies and the errors should be gone now. Then the second dependency we want to add is the MySql driver for Maven, so that we can actually talk with MySql databases. Then click on this link, go to the updated dependency. Select a version, copy the Maven tag and paste it below the other dependency. And reload again. Then if everything worked, you should now be able to access HiCarry objects. Let's start by creating a HiCarry data source. Let's call it data source and make it private. In the onload method, we're going to assign it. So this .data source is equal to new HiCarry data source. And inside here, we're going to pass a configuration that holds all the connection information about the database. So let's create that configuration, HiCarry config. Config is equal to new HiCarry config. To make this plugin more configurable, we're not going to hardcode values inside of that. We're going to create a configuration file. So create a new file called config.yml inside the resources directory, and inside here define the MySql structure. We need a host name, which is by default localhost. Then we need a username. Let's set the default to Minecraft user. Then a password with a default value of password. A port with a default value of 3306, because this is the default MySql port. And then a database name, which by default should be Minecraft. And then we can load all those values like this, get config, get string, and then the path, which is mysql.hostname for the host, username for the username, password for the password, and database for the database. For the port, we don't need a string, we need an integer. So get config, get int, mysql.port. And then we can pass those values to the config with config.setJDBC URL. Then we need to type JDBC, which stands for Java Database Connectivity, colon, the type of database, MySql in this case, colon again, // then the port, then the host, so append host, then colon, then the port, then a / and then the database. We can set the username with config set username, pass username, and the same with the password. So config set password, password. Then let's extract all of that to a new method and call it init database. Then we can test the connection like that, create a try catch block, get a new connection object, new connection, connection is equal to this.data source get connection, and then add the catch block. And inside here, we're just going to log the error with getlogger.severe e.getMessage. And connection is an object that we need to close with connection.close. But since connection extends autoclosable, we can use a try with resources block to let the connection automatically close when we are done with it. And we do that by adding parentheses here, pasting the connection variable inside of that. And now you can see we don't need the manual close statement anymore. So let's remove that. And then we can print get logger info connection to database was successful. If the connection should not be successful, then this message is printed instead. One important thing is to save the default configuration, of course, so that those values actually get written to a config.yml file. Then build the plugin, put it on your server, and start your server. And then, as you can see, access was denied for the user, and this is expected behavior on the first start because we need to enter the correct details to the configuration file first. So stop the server again and open the config.yml in your favorite text editor. The only thing that I need to change for my setup is the password, then save and start the server again. And now, as you can see, the connection to the database was successful. Now we can create the first database table, which we're going to do when the connection was successful. So inside the try block, let's create a table that stores the time and date of every moment when the server starts. So first create an SQL statement for that, which is create table if not exists. Let's call the table server start up, and it only has one attribute called time of type date time with a default value of current time stamp, then semicolon. And to execute this, we're going to need a prepared statement. And prepared statements, just like connections, extend from autoclosable, so we can create a try catch block again, but this time without catch, because the SQL exception that could be thrown by a prepared statement is already handled by the auto try catch block. And then in the resources block, create the prepared statement variable, call it statement, and this will be connection.prepareStatement and pass the SQL. Then execute the statement with statement.execute, semicolon, and restart the server. No errors, everything still worked. And now we can check whether the table was created successfully in a few ways. If you have the ultimate version of IntelliJ, you could add the database here. Create new data source, select MySql, then enter the information here. The user was called Minecraft user and the password was this. Then click on test connection, click on apply and OK. Then a query console window should show up, and then you can do show tables from Minecraft. Then execute with command or control enter, and then you can see the server startup table was created. If you don't have the ultimate version of IntelliJ, you can do it with the command that I showed you before. So navigate to the database directory. In my case, it was on the desktop. Then do docker compose execute -it database mysql -p and enter the root user password. Then you can execute the same commands here. Now to actually store the timestamp when the server starts, we need to do that in the onEnable block. And for that, we're going to create a new method called log startup time. And we call it inside here. And then the same pattern as above. First create an SQL string, insert into startup, then values, then empty parentheses, because the only attribute that we want to enter here, which is time, is already filled by default. So we don't explicitly have to set any data. Then create a try catch block with the connection object. Connection is equal to this.data source get connection. Add the catch block and then also add the prepared statement. Statement is equal to connection prepare statement with SQL. And then execute just as before with statement execute update. Build the plugin and restart the server. Then when the server has started, you can check the data from within the terminal or from IntelliJ if you have the ultimate version by doing select everything from Minecraft.server startup. And now you can see the time that the server has started. And then if you start the server again and update the query, you can see that every new startup is added as a new entry.